you go to China, and I had no expenses except for a Spotify account and an Audible account. Like, it was nothing. For the next 7 years, I didn't own a car or a house. I didn't pay rent. I rarely had to pay for a meal. You never paid for a tank of gas for like 7 years. And so you're getting paid well, but also not having many expenses. And for a young coach, that there are countries out there that are clamoring for Western coaches. There are coaches that have grown up in the Australian sports system, or the U.S. sports system, or the Team GB sports system. You can get great jobs that will pay you really well and house you and feed you for free. And that's just such a great opportunity to just stockpile and invest money early on in your career, and just watch that compounding interest grow.
Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back. Today I'm joined by Rett Larson. Rett, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Hey, it's my pleasure. This is going to be fun.
So you're over in Virginia at the moment. You are the strength and conditioning coach for the Dutch volleyball team, but due to the travel restrictions and whatnot, you're back home in Virginia. Talk us through the last couple of months for you.
Oh man, I'm sure I'm in the majority of your listeners out there that have probably had a crazy couple of months. I fully planned on being over in the Netherlands coaching my team right now, but because both the volleyball season went from Olympics getting canceled, and then all competitions getting canceled, pretty much shrunk the season and took a lot of the agency away from having to train hard this summer. And then secondarily, my country is not playing well with others when it comes to being safe, and pretty much all of Europe, including the Netherlands, doesn't necessarily want to let Americans in right now. And for these reasons, I'm now relegated to coaching from my parents' house in Virginia, where I usually just spend a month in the off season, just kind of catching up with family, and now I'm kind of sheltering in place here. This is not my fine china, in case you're wondering.
Oh, really? Shocking.
I do not own this kind of, if I were to own a house, it probably would not look like this.
I thought you were very civilized, mate. I picked you for something different. No, so actually on the coaching front, how are you getting that done? Remote. What are some of the tools, tricks, and tips that you're doing to get this done?
Yeah, honestly, the coaching load is pretty light. I was coaching a bunch of girls remotely throughout the summer as their club seasons ended, and they were coming back to what they thought should be preparing for the season. And then we just honestly, we gave a bunch of girls a lot of time off to just recover after having a long season last year and club season. So as the girls started coming back, and I thought I was going to be coming back to the Netherlands, or I hoped that I'd be coming back to the Netherlands, we started trying to amp up and write real programming for them. But I'm really lucky that the physio for my team is a Dutch guy, and he's a certified strength and conditioning specialist as well. And so he is more than able to help run the program while I'm not there. We've worked with some data management stuff like Team Builder before, so I leaned on some of my Team Builder stuff to be able to do that. But it's difficult. I mean, the girls are really only training with us maybe for 4 weeks. So it is the club teams are bringing them back early. And so it's just how much of a suit of armor can we put on these girls before they have to go back to their club season, so that we, prepare them for that. And then, hopefully get them back in the spring of next year feeling great.
Well, at least you had that little bit of a buffer. Like, it's not like you were canned mid-season like a lot of the other sports were. Like, you were able to go, okay, we've got some time to have a break. Let's actually have a break. But now it's a case of, oh shoot, we need to get them back in game condition, which is a challenge for everybody at the moment. And you're seeing it. The injuries in our sports down here have gone up. Questions whether it's the fact they're playing multiple games on the same pitch, but I won't get into those types of details. But even Bundesliga in their first week, the German soccer league, they had a ton of injuries as well. So it's a struggle all of our industry are facing. But because I know my team is only training 2 or 3 days a week right now, and so it's manipulating those volumes effectively for each
each girl, because some girls have been great about staying in shape, some haven't. And so it's been a real challenge, I'm sure, for everyone right now. But definitely something I'm never going to forget.
Yeah. Oh, that would be one of those things,
Yeah.
Comparatively to our grandparents or whatever it may be, they went through a lot bigger, much more intense global events. But this will be something you'll be able to sit in the rocking chair one day and
oh yeah.
I got to say that you lived through it.
Journals here where I've been trying to put all this down on paper so I don't forget, so that my kids and grandkids I'll have a good journal of it.
No, that'll be really cool. I'm actually pumped for that myself too. Now, on track of the show and on brand with the show, we want to go through your journey, my friend. So I'll get to where you and I met. But initially, from what I've got here on my records, you're a Cali boy, and I know you're a Cali boy. You kind of look like a Cali boy. You sound like a Cali boy, but in all the best ways. Don't get me wrong. In all the best ways, I kind of look like the Australian equivalent. So there's nothing.
Yeah, right. I'll say right back at you.
100%. But you studied in California, is that right? And then your journey as a sports scientist or strength coach started from there, and you cut your teeth in the industry on the West Coast, is that right?
I did all of my education on the East Coast, but I masquerade as a California guy because I did spend kind of my first 12 hardcore years of coaching, like where I really, like you said, cut my teeth. We're all out in Southern California, right. Kind of honing the craft, and it's from that Southern California launch pad that ended up taking me around the world and bringing me here today, back to the East Coast where I was born, in the house.
With your fine china.
Ironically, right.
And so the first 12 years there, when you say you cut your teeth, is there any kind of key lessons straight off the bat there? I do really want to get into your international travels, probably the main thing that I do want to talk to you about. But those first 12 years, obviously everyone needs to have that, to your words, launching pad. Everyone needs to have those times where they are putting in the hard yards. They don't necessarily, maybe they're getting thrown into a position where they're a bit uncomfortable. They don't know what they're doing. They have to learn. They have to evolve. Right. What were those 12 years like there?
I got on in an outfit called Velocity Sports Performance, which when I started when there was just 3 or 4 of them in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And from there, the summer that I started working there, it franchised out, and all of a sudden there were 80 of them across the country. And because I was incubated, my little internship just happened to be in the flagship, and I had learned under the founder of the company, a guy named Lauren Seagrave, who is a sprint coaching legend here in the States and internationally. I could kind of take my pick of where I wanted to go. So it was a lucky event that I got with Velocity at the right time, and I decided Southern California would be the place for me. And so in Southern California, I joined this is a sports performance franchise that specialized in younger athletes and small group training at a time when not many people were doing it. This is, early 2000s. And so what it gave me, and probably the most valuable thing that I learned, was how to control small groups of kids. I mean, it is such a mistake when I walk into places and I see that the best coaches get to be with like the best athletes, and the kids require a much tougher skill set, and being able to both educate and motivate and keep a smile on a kid's face while you're getting sweaty and making them work their ass off is a absolute skill, especially when there are 6 or 8 of them and they're dying to not behave. Like, being able to command that group and keep them focused and effective and working hard and laughing is this special skill that, you have to practice over and over again over 8, 10 years. And then eventually I went into my franchise, ended up taking over the corporate network. And so I got to be in the front office for Velocity Sports Performance corporate. But I mean, it's what I see most often with coaches that even at the elite level, I see coaches that are really good with 1 or 2 athletes, but you put them with 10 and everything falls apart. That you have athletes standing around, you have athletes that are kind of aimless. I think that it's such a valuable skill to learn group control, to learn how to have fun, how to not be tense in that situation, how to be able to not take yourself too seriously. Like, all of these are really important skills to get early on. And not only that, I was really lucky to, for the first many years of my life, I get a mentor. I get like I get a framework with which I can now build all the stuff that I learn afterward. I'm kind of forced to stick with a model that, fortunately for me, was outstanding and taught me fundamentals of speed, linear and lateral movement mechanics that still hold up today. But since then, I've been able to take that well-rehearsed framework and just keep adding, kettlebells. Oh, all right, let's add that. Let's add this velocity-based training portion. Let's add this. So all of this was very fortunate for me starting out.
So that's interesting. So like a lot of coaches that would start out, I think they're really focused on what their framework's going to be, because they may or may not, most cases, may not necessarily have that solid, reliable framework, because they may bounce around from job to job and they don't have someone like your mentor who well-respected nationally, internationally, who can go, Rhett, this is what you need to do from a framework perspective. And you can go, okay, cool. I'll trust that. I'll stay here for 12 years. I'll be under that. And then you start adding on those couple of elements. The biggest thing actually, because you often see a coach maybe develop, and this isn't right or wrong. I'm not saying whether being a fun coach or a more commanding coach is correct or incorrect, but you kind of see coaches go in one path or another. And I think what I want to understand from you is you had I'll call it a bit of a luxury to have that really solid framework to begin with. Obviously you had to learn it and master that. But then I've seen you in action a little bit, and we'll get to that global clip that went bonkers a few months ago. But you can't have that, you can't have that play without the respect. Right. So how do you as a coach go about, and if you want to share some of the techniques or stories where you've been able to command respect, but also you've been go, okay, cool, you respect me, but let's have a joke, let's have a laugh, because a lot of times it's really hard to have both.
Yeah, it is absolutely a skill that a few coaches do really exceptionally well. And I was lucky enough to work for this franchise that over the course of 10 years, I must have worked with 50 different coaches that all brought something different to the table. Like, one of my favorite coaches I've ever worked with was a guy whose personality couldn't be more different than mine. Just, real quiet, real reserved, very intense. But if you were to ask me who I wanted to coach me, I might pick that guy. But he and I couldn't have been more different. That, the styles, the coaching styles that you just pick from, like I'm picking from modalities, like, I'm going to learn a little bit about physio balls from this guy. I'm going to learn a little bit about speed mechanics from this guy. I'm also picking from, oh man, I am absolutely learning that this guy uses his knowledge of the front page of the sports section every day to connect with every athlete that walks in the door. He can talk basketball, all right, so noted. Maybe that doesn't fit for me, but maybe it does. And so I quickly learned that I am best when I am having fun, when I am just being light. But that, to your point, I can get away with that because I also can walk the walk. So this foundation that I have in fundamentals of speed and strength that I've developed over the years, I tell people, I'm very transparent with what we're going to be doing and what it's going to do. One of the fundamentals that I learned early on was to educate athletes. So, I rarely prescribe an exercise where I'm not saying, hey, and by the way, this is going to work on your crossover mechanics. I know you told me that you were struggling with making that hip turn. Well, look what we're doing right here. This should help. And sure, and when that improves, and this is where the monitoring goes in, that then I get the street cred that allows me to now not have to do so much explaining and to just create an environment in the weight room that is busting with excitement, with achievement, with just fun, with atmosphere, and I can kind of bring that secret sauce. But none of that works if I'm not also printing out a sheet every Wednesday that shows everybody how much faster they're getting in their 10-meter sprints that we time every Wednesday morning.
Understand. So that foundation then led you to a move to China. So talk me through, before I really want to talk about how those skills translated to an environment where you knew none of the language, or I saw you do know some. You do know some of the language, but and you did pretty well. But what does that move like? How do these types of moves happen? Because firstly, the question I see a lot from people, doesn't matter if they're young or old in the industry, is like how the hell does someone from the US get a gig in China? and get set up? And how does that all come about?
Well, it's not like I went over to China and was just like, hello, Chinese Olympic Committee, I'd like to work for you. No, I got lucky that Exos, which was at the time Athletes Performance, which is an enormous training company out here that does a similar thing as Velocity Sports Performance, that they had signed a mega deal with the Chinese Olympic Committee to become kind of one of the first big deal that brought Western coaches over to coach all of these gold medal factory teams. And the way that I get this job is by, I think, just being someone that had a good reputation for being, somebody that has been in a leadership role, can lead coaches. I was in a unique position where I had the maturity, meaning just age. I was 38 years old, but didn't have a wife and kids. So I had the mobility to be able to head over to China and be able to commit to 10 months over there before the London Olympics. And so, fortunately for me, through my connections of, so many people from Velocity Sports Performance had gone on to Exos. And when the opportunity came up to field a team over there, they asked me if I wanted to do it. And it was tough, but I thought it was only going to be, an 8-10 month gig. And then I would be back at Velocity or stay with Exos AP. I had no idea that it would kind of sink its claws in me, and I would start to really crave the discomfort of China. But the things that I learned, like the sense of humor part, my reliance on measuring things in order to almost take the place of all the explanations that I was having to give. There's times in China where, I have to be able to pull out of my bag of tricks. Okay, I've just preached to them as best I could through my translator at the time that they're way too quad dominant. I'm going to make them use their glutes more. Well, I'm going to have to make their glutes sore as crap tomorrow. All right, what exercises do I use to be able to, because the coach is not going to respect me if the kids aren't complaining every time they have to sit on the toilet tomorrow. And little tricks like that are the manipulations that you need to be able to keep a job over there. I mean, I have to be able to make glutes and abs sore at a moment's notice. I have tips and tricks, all of those are in my back pocket. I have to be able to prove that I can make vertical jumps quickly and better quickly, just through some arm mechanics and some hip flexor stretches. Like there's a little bit of I think salesmanship that goes into having to work in China. And also it's honestly, it's an endurance event over there. You have to be mentally pretty able to withstand some discomfort that a lot of coaches aren't. And I was lucky enough to kind of get into a mindset that I wanted to be in for the long haul to see what I could do. I didn't want to go over to China and not have left a little bit of a mark and not have it left a mark on me.
Did you ever envision traveling overseas for coaching? Was that ever something that you wanted to do?
No, didn't even think of it. It wasn't even on my radar until AP came to me and laid it out in front of me. And then I thought, this is the perfect time for an adventure. I'd just broken up with a girl. It was a great time to get out of Southern California. And I was like, we'll do this for a couple of months. And then there's something about being, I know it sounds silly, but being a big fish in a small pond, being one of the few foreign coaches over there. And especially when, of my team of 8 physios and coaches, 6 of them never wanted to come back to China. And it was hard that first year. Wow. And so I kind of thought, when people are running this way, there's a lot of smart people that say, this is the time to double down and go back in. And, it's the most transformative decision I've ever made. It's the best professional decision of my life, was becoming the China guy for a while.
Yeah, and talk to me about that. So before we started recording, you were talking about the benefits of moving over there and how you wish that a lot of young coaches would begin to explore these opportunities before you did. Why, along with all the reasons that you've just laid out, why begin to think about international travel?
Well, immediately, like just after the London Olympics, just that opportunity, and which is, diving into unknown waters. We went over there not knowing who we'd be working with, that we were going to go over and the Chinese Olympic Committee was just going to put us with somebody. And we just assumed it was going to be, and it could very well have been with terrible B teams, junior teams. not terrible, but weird sports that they don't expect to even be near the podium for, just kind of test us out. But we got over there, and Exos had done such a great job of selling it and bringing over heavy hitters that had sold them on the process and the program methodology that we were lucky enough to be working, like I said, with table tennis and diving and gymnastics, perennial gold medal sweep, just medal stand sweepers. And so you come back from the London Olympics having worked with possibly a dozen gold medalists. And so your resume just goes crazy. And also you've had to expand the scope of your training to be able to include these, what are kind of fringe sports. I come from a place where before this, the lion's share of my sports were basketball, American football, soccer, and the standard sports. Well, now I've had to open my brain to think, okay, fencing. Fencing. I got a fencing gold medalist that needs to learn deceleration. Are you kidding me? These guys are the best decelerators on planet Earth. What? I would need a ping pong player that wants me to increase their hand-eye coordination and agility. If it was another sport, I'd say play ping pong to increase your hand-eye coordination and agility. But how do you do this? How do you make a guy better at an iron cross in gymnastics? Holy shit, I don't know. So it really, and getting to work with also these people from across the world, like guys in Australia, like David Joyce, that ended up being I'm working with the best of the best, getting to put our heads together at lunch every day, trying to figure out these problems. And it just becomes this multiplying effect of it being a think tank, and also just crazy experiences left and right. And
that was
go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, and what we were talking about beforehand, maybe the obvious or the side benefit of it is that it becomes this wonderful opportunity to just stockpile money. I mean, to be completely honest, like you go to China, and I had no expenses except for a Spotify account and an Audible account. Like it was nothing. And I went from, for the next 7 years, I didn't own a car or a house. I didn't pay rent. I rarely had to pay for a meal. You never paid for a tank of gas for like 7 years. And so you're getting paid well, but also not having many expenses. And for a young coach, that if you can, there are countries out there that are clamoring for Western coaches. There are coaches that have, that grow up in the Australian sports system, or the, US sports system, or the Team GB sports system. You can get great jobs that will pay you really well and house you and feed you for free. And that's just such a great opportunity to just stockpile and invest money early on in your career, and just watch that compounding interest grow.
Yeah, because you use the word obvious, and I think it's not so obvious for for a lot of people. I didn't necessarily realize. I knew that when we'd first met, I knew that things would be accounted for you, but I didn't realize to what extent. So when you were explaining it to me, I was like, holy crap, people need to be aware of what's happening. And I think you're in a really ideal situation. I don't think it's fair to say that every single program will put up people to the extent that you will put up. But to your point, the quickest way to save money is to stop spending it. And if someone else is going to start, fitting the bills for these things, it's a really nice way to become more financially secure.
It's honestly a knob that many coaches don't even know that they could possibly turn during a negotiation. That if there's a top out in how much salary somebody's going to give you, you need to start talking about, well, what expenses can this person take away from me that maybe doesn't direct, maybe it's not direct money or whatever that they can get a tax break on or something. Because, unfortunately, some of the reasons that China was lucrative is that China was difficult and uncomfortable. So, it's not like, I'm sure I would hate for coaches to be out there being like, all right, I need to Google search strength and conditioning jobs in Paris. Because if I have to suffer through a couple of years coaching in Paris, that's to be able to get good money, you kind of sometimes have to agree to go to a place that isn't Disneyland. And so it can be tough. It's not all easy, but payoff can be worth it for a young coach.
So we had met, I think it was 2017. I remember I was only a few months into the job. I don't think you'd realize that at the time.
No,
so it was, I was only a couple
came off as a seasoned bro.
I was a couple months in, and all of a sudden it was, oh shoot, we need, the Chinese Olympic Committee has purchased this. You need to go over there and you need to train them. And I was, all the things you're talking about going over there, I was like, oh crap, what, no language skills, no nothing. So even for me, shoot, I was there for 2 or 3 days, and I've gone back a few times periodically. But that first experience where you get there, and sure, international airports, there's some translation. Yeah. But other train stops, the rest of the place, nothing, absolutely nothing. Talk me through the experience there. Obviously, probably one of you talked about your gold medals from 2012, but 2016, I believe you were the primary strength coach for the Chinese women's volleyball team, where they won the gold medal. Yeah. So talk me through that experience in China, and more so just from a personal perspective. You talk about the difficulties of fitting in. Yeah. I experienced it for those couple of days where I didn't have any English, but you had to live with it. Talk me through some of the stories there personally about fitting into a foreign land.
Well, one of the things that I was so happy that I started doing back in 2011, right at the beginning, I took Mandarin classes throughout my 7 years. So I got certified kind of level 2 of 7 in Mandarin proficiency, which is good enough to be, it's good enough for me to feel calm in any situation. I can talk my way into and out of, I can get almost everything I need done. I can talk to a cab driver, small talk, whatever. And so I realized really soon that that's what I needed to do in order for days not to feel like they were 70 hours long. Because when every meal is a potential kind of slightly stressful conflict, and every cab ride you go into is stressful, when every little interaction is stressful, it becomes a harder life. And I realized really, really quickly that I didn't like having to coach with a translator. I wanted to be able to have that direct communication. So doubling down and learning as much Chinese as I could as I went became crucial for me. But what you say is completely correct, that it can be really, it can really almost drain a person all day, not, feeling like they're constantly just their heads right here above the water, barely being able to stay afloat. And I think you can embrace that. Like, for instance, going to China is putting my headphones into a crowded market and just either listening to books or listening to podcasts or just listening to and just blocking everything out. The amount of thinking, it's going to seem silly. I'm reviewing my journals, but I started journaling in China, and I'm so grateful to have had I'm in the United States. I'm completely distracted. Distracted in the same way as everyone is with all of the social media that's blocked in China. And so many coaches go to China lamenting that they can't get on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. But for me, it was the most wonderful unplugging that I needed at exactly that time in my life, where all of a sudden I could focus more, I could read more, I became more interesting. I think I developed new skills. I couldn't have learned Mandarin if every night it was either learning Mandarin or surfing Facebook. So for me, it's embracing the suck in a lot of the circumstances you're in, which is a skill I definitely honed while over there in China. For me, it was a wonderful excuse to unplug.
And so we'll get off China, because I've got a bit of a soft spot for it as well. I think that when I first met you, it was only a couple of days there, but like I said, I'd gone back a couple of times, and just that uncomfortability, not so much, obviously from a language perspective, but I was just sitting there a little bit. I'm always frustrated, just general life. Obviously, traffic's going a different way, which isn't too crazy, but just the way the streets move, as an example, how close things are, and the first couple of days I was going, they're doing it wrong.
Oh yeah, they're doing white knuckle in every taxi. Every taxi will just be white knuckle, being like, "Did you see that?" Yeah. And you start just filming random taxis, and
it's like they're doing life wrong. And then after a few days, I went, no, they're just doing life different, and it works. So just roll with it. And to your point, I'm sure you had a longer period of time to get to that calmness, but that was the calmness that I had to put over myself, even being there for a week or two. That was the thing that I had to do.
you just touched on one of the most important lessons that I had to learn. And when I was living in Shanghai, my second year there, working with the Shanghaiese athletes, that you would see, I mean, I've told this story before, but I saw a coach hitting an athlete, just open hand smack across the face, a 17-year-old girl, like a male coach, just laying her out on the ground. And you see behavior that would get any coach fired and on the front page of a newspaper immediately if it happened in the West. But you have to realize that I'm seeing it through this Western lens. And if that girl's mom and dad had seen that, probably wouldn't be nearly as offended as I am. That they haven't seen 1,000 Disney movies about how coaches treat athletes and coming and winning the bad news bears that come through at the end and win the game, and how these wonderful stories of sports, like they don't have that lens. They haven't been through all the stages, and they don't intend to be horrible. They just haven't gotten there yet, and a bunch of different things. So when we had a mantra when we were there to be China positive, and that it's going to be really easy because the things that are negative about China are very loud in your face. And it's sometimes very hard to find out the China positive. Once my team and I kind of made that our mission, was that every time we got together, we wouldn't just bitch about China constantly. We would talk about the reasons that we love being there. Yeah. It was emotionally, we started to love the place. And that's really what did it in that second year, to keep me there for 5 more.
and that's sorry, you go.
Yeah. No, go.
And that's probably someone, a tip for anyone in a sucky situation, like you had said, embrace the suck, that to think about all the, China positive, or insert whatever it is, positive elements of your job, life, whatever. That's fantastic. So you when did you move to the Netherlands? Was that late 2017? Was that 2018? You went to the Netherlands?
So
how did that go?
After this, so it was right after the Chinese, the women's volleyball team won the gold in Rio, which was an enormous deal in China. And so, it was crazy. So, and so after that, I asked the head coach of the Chinese team if I could take a year off or summer off, the summer right after the games, which really doesn't matter very much. I said, can I go over and help a buddy of mine out that had just become the head coach of the Netherlands? He was an American, and he had called and said, Rett, is there any chance I can steal you away? I want to have a strength and conditioning coach that I know that can help me start my journey with the Netherlands on the right foot, strength and conditioning. I want a guy, that I don't have to worry about. And so I asked the Chinese head coach, and she was gracious enough to say, hey, as long as you promise to come back, you can do it. And I did come back. So I coached in the Netherlands in 2017. Okay. And then I came back to China in 2018. But James, I don't have to tell you, man, after going from working in Holland and then going back to China, that was tough. And I felt like at that point, I love China. I still do, and could absolutely see myself working there again sometime. But I still had it in me that I wanted to see what this scrappy little Dutch team could do. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of be with an underdog, and it didn't work out very well, but but it worked. But socially, like, I have no regrets. I love living in Europe. I love working in Europe, and I love the Dutch girls as much as I loved the Chinese team. So, so that's where I am now. And so, I'll be there for the next few years. But
post 2021.
It's like Woody Allen says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, it could get postponed again, mate, with what's going on. Right. Far out. Yeah. No, that's crazy. And probably one of the most, well, I say most notable, it's probably not most notable for you, but most notable for the rest of the world in terms of what's going on with Rett, was that video that came out where you were, warming up with the Dutch girls there. I'm sure, knowing you, I don't think that is a abnormal day for you. I'm not saying that you warm them up like that every single session. In fact, I've seen interviews where you said you don't. But I don't necessarily want to talk about the theories behind it, because I can and that when I saw that and you had just said, and knew your experience about being a commander and someone who knew how to have fun and had the fundamentals, that right there was the epitome of all of that, right? And from your interviews after, I go, yeah, I completely get it. What was that like actually following that? You know, was there because that got mainstream media attention?
Oh.
Wasn't just in our little sports science world; it was everywhere.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, the guy who made the video when we were in Italy just kept on coming up to me. I'd see him at tournaments over the next 2 weeks. He just kept coming up to me saying, "It's at 3.5. It's at 4.2 million. It's at 5.3 million hits." Like, just numbers I can't wrap my head around. And to me, this is just, there are little tricks that I put into my work. Like, a big part of the way that I train is, I think, an overlooked area of strength and conditioning is keeping things unpredictable and keeping things and not taking yourself too seriously, which I said before, that, you've got to have the goods. You've got to be, I bring a level of intensity and seriousness in 70% of what I do, but it's always within a package of lighthearted happiness. But there's no doubt that we're going to hit numbers and we're going to hit speeds. And one of the reasons I love, Fusion is that my timing gates don't lie. And it's like an assistant coach for me. I can be fun, but you better hit your numbers. You've got to jump so high. You got to, and I'm going to put weight on your back, and you're going to have to hit numbers, and I'm going to make sure you do. But if things are trending in the right way, there's absolutely no reason that working hard and having a ton of fun are mutually exclusive ideas. And I've done, I did that. I do the dances with the Chinese team too. It's just, we're usually a little bit behind closed doors, but the dancing, as I've said before, it's like the last 2.5 minutes of a 15-minute warm up before games. And it started out just being a very simple, just rapid response drills, it's quick feet and, hip turns and quick steps and cut steps and things like that. And then it just very logically, to me, I couldn't see really the difference between having to mimic me doing quick steps and me doing a running man step or flossing. It's all just neurological mimicry that helps tune the system up, but it also has the added benefit of loosening my team up, that everybody smiles. It distracts the crap out of the other team, which is always kind of fun.
Yeah.
And maybe we recruit some fans to our side that love to see a team just have some fun out there. I don't think that's a bad thing. And to see the crowd, showing up earlier, to see the warm-ups every day and all the video cameras that would come out. But when they did the video, to see that go nuts. What it did is what I loved about it is it did open up a dialogue in strength and conditioning communities that at first was like, sometimes I was amazed that people could be so adversarial to this. People that would have athletes do ladder drill exercises, but think that me making them do a dance would be, is that different? And it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't logically compute. But for me, there's also a bit of vulnerability to it. I can make the girls do this because I'm also looking like a tremendous ass out there. And they know that me looking silly, that if I'm willing to do that for them, then they'll do that for me. And I think they also love the attention. So there's a little bit of that.
Sure, they would have been happy to see the views go up as well.
You should have seen after it all went nuts. Like, if I would do a warm up and I didn't hit at least one dance move per group, like, I would have them at the end after a warm up ended and we 3 clap it out. The girls come to me and be like, "Yeah, why didn't you do it? Rett, you got to do a dance with us every time." But I'm not taking. This has to be reactive. I'm not taking. You're not my boss.
Hey, you gotta keep them wanting more.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I'm sure every arena you go to, or that social media guy will be Rett, do it again. And so.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm not a puppet here. I'm not a puppet.
No. And I'm thinking about shutting it down because the pressure got to be awful. Like, I found myself having to look at YouTube videos of like Fortnite victory dances. And I was like, oh man, what am I doing? What is going on?
Stick to the fundamentals.
It was a fun little window of fame that was pretty. But like I said, it was really nice to kind of open the window of dialogue to be able to say, hey, did I miss the memo where there's only one way to get athletes' body temperatures up and prepare them for battle? Because I think that it's very limited in thinking. If you think that jumping jacks and jump rope are the only two thermogenic exercises that are adequate for getting an athlete's muscles pliable.
Oh, and I think, you hit the nail on the head when you said that there's no reason why we can't work incredibly hard and have a ton of fun at the same time. They're not exclusive. Mate, I've taken more time than I said I would. The question I ask every guest at the end is if you are 18 or if you are cutting your teeth at the industry, you don't have to be 18. If you're just getting into the space or you're ready to make a move in the next stage of your career, what words of advice would you have to say, you being Rett, to those people that may be watching?
All right. As I've said before, look to work abroad. Look outside of where you are to try to get an opportunity abroad. My second bit of advice is pause your third attempt at reading Super Training for a minute and read a book on investing. Read a book on how to take care of your money, because unfortunately our job doesn't pay a lot. And so take advantage of time to be able to make sure your money is working for you so that you don't have to be an 80-year-old coach still out there screaming across the track or in a weight room. Only be doing that because you love to freaking do it, not because you need to do it. And I'm always imploring young coaches to make sure that you are minimizing, like living as minimalist as you can, just shaving expenses as best as possible so you can put money away in a place where it will grow and make money for you early on, so that you can have tons of freedom to enjoy a life like I do, which is just working the summers and taking all winter off. So that's my advice.
You're the man, Rett. If you like this interview, you want to see more, you can subscribe up there. The last one we did, you can check that out. That's just down here. That's with Matty Khan, a sports scientist from the Canterbury Bulldogs. Rett, thank you very much for joining. I know it's getting late over there in Virginia. Thank you very much. I'm James Grigson. See you later.
Thanks, James.